Hi, thank you for joining us at Tax Talk UK. We're going to talk about VAT registration. Before I do, if I could just ask you to take a moment, please, to subscribe to our channel and also turn on the notifications. That way you'll be able to easily refer back to this and other content that you may find useful when running your small business. And you will also get notified of new content as we upload it. Thank you very much. So back on to VAT registration. So in another video, we have covered VAT, value added tax, as an actual tax and talked a little bit about that. And today I'm going to focus more on the registration and whether you need to register along those lines. Although there will be some overlap between the two videos because the topics are, of course, quite interlinked. So if you're running a business, even if you're not VAT registered, it is important to have an understanding of how VAT works, even just the basics and how that may or may not affect your business. There may be some situations where people could benefit from voluntary registration, but that won't be the case for everyone. It will depend very much on the business, your market. And so in order to determine or even to know whether you need to look at it, you will need to have at least a basic grasp of VAT. Whether you are mandated to have to register for VAT will be determined by your turnover. So turnover relates to the money that you're actually taking from your customers or your clients before you take your expenses off. So the money actually coming into your business. And what you'll notice is that the threshold relates to a 12-month period. Now, it specifically relates to a 12-month rolling calendar period. So we're not talking about what your turnover was in your last financial year or your the last tax year. We're talking about specifically if you go back to the month before the month that we're in and the 12 months before that, adding up, does that make your turnover come to over the VAT threshold? If so, then you will need to register for VAT. If your turnover runs close to the VAT threshold, but you don't want to voluntarily register, it is really, really important that you make that calculation of your 12-month rolling turnover every single month, because if you go over the VAT threshold inadvertently, that can be very costly for your business. So if you are going to go over, it's important that you know before you actually go over. Otherwise, you will end up having to pay some VAT to HMRC without necessarily being able to reclaim it from your customers. So good financial management anyway would mean that you would have at least a monthly eye on your accounts. So if you're using software, it certainly wouldn't be very difficult to keep that rolling 12-month figure under review, as I say, particularly if you're close to the threshold, to make sure you don't go over without realising. If you expect or you know that in a 12-month period your turnover is going to exceed the VAT threshold, so currently that is 85,000 in a 12-month period, then you must register for VAT. If you hope that it will, that you will reach that turnover, but you don't know how long it's going to take, perhaps you think that it might take a couple of years for your business to grow, and so you're not really sure, then it's okay to wait. But as soon as you know that you're going to go over. And as I talked about before, I can't stress how important it is to keep an eye on your turnover in relation to the VAT threshold, to ensure that you don't exceed the threshold without realising it. If you do go over the VAT threshold without realising, you will be required to pay to HMRC the VAT that you should have charged from the date that you exceeded the threshold. But as I mentioned before, you may not necessarily be able to reclaim that back from your customers or clients. So therefore, it is important to know before, because it can be, as you see, costly to find out after and have invoiced and carried out works inadvertently being over the threshold. And I know I talk about this a lot, but I can't stress how important it is. If you don't understand or you're not certain on what you need to do, then please get some professional help and guidance to make sure that your VAT records are correct and that you are registered or not registered as it is entirely appropriate for your business. If your turnover in a 12-month period is underneath the threshold for mandatory registration of VAT, and you don't expect it to reach that level, then you are able, if you wish, and if it's appropriate, to voluntarily register for VAT. That is, unless all of your supplies are exempt from VAT, i.e. what you're selling to your customers. So again, it all comes down to having a good understanding of the basics of VAT, and specifically the rates that would be applicable or are applicable if you're registered to your individual business. There are a few reasons why a business may choose to be voluntarily or to voluntarily register for VAT, even if they're underneath the threshold. And this will be very much individual. It will be based on the business, what their operations are, their client or customer base, their projected market, or their target market, should I say, as well as the image that their business wants to promote or project to the client base. So there are instances where a potential customer or client insist that they will only work with a VAT registered business for one reason or another, and if you have an understanding that the target customers or clients that you want to appeal to require this, then that would be one reason. There can be a purely financial reason by being able to reclaim the VAT, but before you do this, you should understand your own customers and the impact of your VAT registration to them. So, for example, if you provide standard VAT registered supplies, products or services, then if your clients or customers predominantly are VAT registered businesses and will be able to recoup and reclaim that VAT, then you're impacting their cash flow, of course, but not actually in the overall scheme of things impacting their costs, because they will be able to reclaim the VAT. So they may not be unduly bothered about your registration for VAT. If you work predominantly with individuals and households who wouldn't be able to reclaim the VAT, and you supply standard rate products or services, then in effect your cost is increasing by 20%. So it may be that your market can't sustain that, and in effect then you would have to reduce your net cost, which would therefore reduce your profit. So it is really important not to make any rash decisions or think, yes, this is great, I'm going to register voluntarily. You must think about the impact, the financial impact, the impact on your customers, as well as the administrative burden of having to submit regular VAT returns and maintain the record. So these are all things to consider. And if you're not sure, then you should get some professional guidance, just to, even if it's just to talk you through, to make sure you correctly understand and you do the right thing that's right for your business. Not doing so can be incredibly costly over time. So hopefully this has helped you to determine whether you must be registered for VAT, how to make sure you don't inadvertently go over the VAT threshold, and if you're under the VAT threshold, it gives you some things to consider as to whether you might want to consider voluntary registration. But as I mentioned earlier, it's very much an individual business decision and lots of factors to consider. So you should get help with that if you need to. And I shall pop all the links that I've referred to, and for you to be able to check if you're not watching this video straight away, for example, in the future, where you find out what the current VAT threshold is. And as I mentioned before, if I could ask you please to subscribe to our channel, you can then refer back to the information if you need to, hopefully find other useful information, content on our channel, and to be notified as we upload or update any of our content. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.